the younger generation's soft and they don't read and they don't understand what we went through. We latchkey kids, we're so tough.
Hey, it's Julie. Welcome to Uncomfy. A lot of us are struggling right now with how to stay open to others when we seem to be living in different realities. I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells with people, but I also don't want to give up on connection. This is a podcast about staying with the moments we usually want to escape, the awkward ones, the tense ones, the ones that can actually teach us something. So let's get uncomfy.
When I received the pushback that I wasn't necessarily expecting, I was humbled in the best possible way. I was a little embarrassed.
Folks, I want you to meet Sean Murphy. He is director of the Center for Story at Shenandoah University, where he also teaches. And an arts nonprofit that he leads, which is called 1455, has just published an anthology of poems written by young people between the ages of 10 and 21. Sean, welcome. It's great to have you on Uncomfy.
Julie, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
So back up then and give us a little bit of the context. This was an interaction you had between your students, you and your students.
Yes. So I've worn some different hats in my career. I was in the tech industry as an analyst for years, and I was used to being the black sheep as an English major amongst a lot of stats people. And then I founded 1455 almost a decade ago, and then went to Shenandoah. So I feel like it dealt with a lot of artists, academics, and young writers. So I kind of went into this class I was teaching recently, full of positive expectation. And the class I was teaching was called Art and Creativity in Culture. And we went decade by decade through the 20th century and looked at important movies, books, music. We got to the 80s and inevitably discussion of the classic 80s movie and inevitably the John Hughes. And I explained to them how the familiar setup was there was some kind of black sheep that was relentlessly bullied or intimidated by someone in the system. And by the end, they had kind of fought back. And that led me to a riff where I was talking about where I thought with the confidence that can only come from an oblivious older person, I said what I thought was actually a tremendous compliment, which was, one thing I've observed is that the younger generations have had more empathy, are generally kinder. So it seems to me from what I've seen and heard that bullying, you guys haven't had to experience this primal fear of walking through the locker room and being afraid of being beaten up. And I thought they were going to receive that compliment and be like, yeah, maybe you had it tougher in some ways. And to a person, everyone in the classroom very politely pushed back. And it's important to say that it was a very diverse class. I had a student athlete, I had an English major, I had a black sheep that would not have been out of place in a John Hughes film, but it was a lot of different perspectives, and all of them echoed, which was bullying still exists. It just isn't the way you're describing. It's almost entirely online, and it's a constant thing. And I actually kind of had the chill of recognition where I thought how little, even though I thought I understood a lot, I had no real frame of reference for what this younger generation that's grown up online has experienced. So that led to a whole discussion where I said, I'm zipping it. I want to hear, what is bullying? Explain to me what you all have been through.
I mean, was there a part of you that was sort of like coming into this conversation, as we older folks tend to do, and thinking, oh, this younger generation, they don't know what it was really like, when we
100%.
Suffered.
100%. And that was part of both the immediate thought and the aftermath. I think I had to check myself because as an arts advocate, someone that has published young writers, has been in the classroom, we can always be more empathetic and more understanding, like no question. But I didn't think I was that guy. Like I'm one that doesn't readily join in with the younger generation's soft and they don't read and they don't understand what we went through. We latchkey kids, we're so tough. But I will admit that I've not completely rejected that stereotype and kind of said, well, they don't know what it was like back in the day, and hear myself sounding like that the old guy in the yard yelling at the clouds. And it hit me, not just that I didn't properly understand their experience, but it made me think, what would you have done in 1987, in the late 80s, if social media was a thing? And when I reflected on it, Julie, I thought, probably I wouldn't have handled it nearly as well as some of these kids do. And I thought, how many of my peers, especially the ones that aren't as inherently empathetic, need to hear this. Just hearing them without judgment and in their own words describe it's 24/7. Even when you're not online, the internet is there. So if people are targeting you or harassing you, or, and this was the kicker, right, Julie, excluding you, it was all done whether you're aware of it or not, and the damage has already been accumulating. And there's no way necessarily that a parent or a principal can step in, because some of this is done with the plausible deniability. If students are confronted, like, why are you targeting so and so, or why did you leave her out of all the pictures? They can say, oh, we didn't mean to, like, we were just sharing pictures. And they were explaining how all of them had at different times suffered humiliation, or the group, people jumping in and then strangers jump in. Like I said, it gives me a chill thinking about it now, just in the sense of, yes, empathy, but actually putting myself in those shoes and saying, like, remember how much you don't know.
So how's that changing the way you spent a lot of time interacting with young people, and also you've just spent all this time curating like the many, many, many submissions of poems written by these young kids. We'll talk about some of what you learned and what that was like to read all of these words of these great young poets. But kind of broadly, like, what is it that you now know about, or what's different now about the way you think about the younger generation and sort of you/my kind of, I guess, obligation toward them?
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, and I'm glad you asked it. I think I had a tremendous sense of culpability. We know that the younger generation is growing up unable to remember a time when there wasn't climate change, when there wasn't a country divided, this much down the middle, where at least temporarily in 2026, the job market suddenly doesn't look so great. Like, there are all these pressures, and I think we look at it, or I'll just say, the people I've talked to tend to look, well, we're handling that, Gen X, and we're battling that, and they're going to inherit, the work we do, and it's brought into much sharper relief. They're not only aware of it, and they're not only dealing with it, they're dealing with it with a grace and passion and open-mindedness that is tremendously inspiring. Most of the people I've talked to, or the work I've read, there's this sense of we're in it together, and whatever solutions we come up with are going to benefit everyone. There's this sense of genuine unity. And I can say, again, being a proud Gen Xer, I will admit in my own writing, we always need a bad guy, in our movies, in our writing. Like, we need someone to say, well, if we could just elect so-and-so, if we could, defeat the bad guy, we'll emerge victorious. And I think there's almost a more mature and very kind of organic appreciation of these are systemic issues that we're going to have to tackle head on. So not looking at it as, yeah, we need to just displace the olds and take over and make things right. I think every generation does think that, and it's very naive. And we come to get older and appreciate there's a lot of problems in the world that can't be easily solved. And I think there are so many younger Americans that are up for the challenge and trying to make the most of it. So it was not for nothing that the theme of our first anthology is on the theme of hope. And as you can imagine, the variety of engagement that I received there was mind-boggling.
Is there one that you want to point to, or kind of are there themes that, you've talked about the resilience and the grace and the unity. Maybe give us a sample of a young person's voice.
Maybe that would be the best way to do it. I'd be happy. I would just say this, the poems that I saw, the quality, I will say happily, blew me away. And I think I said earlier, Julie, it was dealing with hope. And in some senses, it's a very deliberately ambiguous, so what does hope mean? What does hope mean today? How does it cross-cut political, social, economic? So there were variations on this theme, some of them deeply personal, about, people that have been through dark times and either are fighting to retain hope or talking about the hope that pulled them through. Teenagers writing eloquently about global issues that we're all confronting, and talking about how we might deal with that, how we need to change our attitudes. But there is one poem, if I had to pick, this poet, Victoria Bogatz, who's 18, is the young poet laureate of Nebraska. So it feels really good to not mention the other 176 writers, but to shine a light on her, because her poem is both wonderful and I think represents the theme as well as in the other ones, and it's called How to Unburn the World. I grasp at the ghosts of my poetry, my fingers scorching like a prayer. The city of angels is burning 12,000 miles away, but I feel it here too, in this rainless Nebraska tundra, once disparate and now just as desperate. I watch notebooks pluming into orange, air dizzy with heat, sickly pages curling into one another like lost lovers. All the poetry is red and dead and burning alive, and I know the poets are next. Yet I keep writing, because it's all I can do to cope, and as my pencil roves, lifting demons into the fabric of today, tomorrow, forever, I wonder, can poetry bring these ashes back to life? Can poetry unburn the world? Can my words be a phoenix, a resurrection, a retrieval, a return, a retinal redemption for this endlessly ending earth? Maybe if I put my life into this movement, this moment, maybe if I try hard enough and write fast enough, I can fix it. Or maybe the calamity of centuries worth of destruction will finally come to an end, and everything will be gone except a few final fires, a few ocean waves, and I won't have to save the world anymore. Instead, I'll go skinny dipping on Saturdays and laugh like my life depends on it. I'll stare up at clear skies and smile, and cry and lie until I die. Eventually, my hands will become starched with sand, my face soggy with salt. I, like everything, will return to the earth. The plastic will fade, the greenhouse will cool, the ashes will rise, and I know it's foolish, but I can't help to hope that the end will be the beginning.
Victoria Bogatz, kudos. Yeah, it's beautiful.
And Julie, I'm happy to sometimes you find yourself saying things like, I have hope for the future. These kids are amazing. We are in good hands. Like all the things that sound trite, when you really feel them and you hold a book like this, that's such a labor of love, you can't help but be inspired. And it makes me feel more engaged. It makes me feel like, you think you're doing enough, you need to do more. And there is this sense of community being built. And you said it at the beginning, this being uncomfortable, it does lead to these moments of connection. And I think that's what we're all here for.
Sean Murphy is director of the Center for Story at Shenandoah University. He teaches there. He's founding director of 1455, which is the nonprofit arts organization that is also publishing this Young Poets Anthology, which is out now. You can go to 1455litarts.org to get more information. Sean, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Julie, likewise, and thanks for not only for having me on today, but hosting these conversations. They're so important, and I think we can all learn a great deal, and it gives me a lot to learn and look forward to.
And thank you for getting uncomfy with us today. Have you had an uncomfy moment related to a generational difference with someone? How did it go? How did you work through that difference? I'd love to hear your story. Email uncomfy@byu.edu or find us on social media to keep the conversation going. We are at uncomfy.podcast on Instagram. Uncomfy is a BYU radio podcast. Samuel Benson produces it, and the team includes Maggie Mathis and Abby Karras. Our theme music was composed by Kelsey Ney. I'm Julie Rose. Can't wait to get uncomfy with you again next week. Hey friends, it's Julie. I want to tell you about another show I'm really enjoying right now. It's called Kaboom. It's an audio adventure podcast, also from BYU Radio, and it is for the whole family to enjoy together. Every episode features a new adventure with sound effects and professional voice actors. Whether it's a teleportation experiment gone wrong, or an ancient Viking curse wreaking havoc on the high school football team, or a baby dragon hiding in the attic, Kaboom is such a fun listen. It is perfect for chore time, road trips, maybe even bedtime if it doesn't get your kids too amped up. And the best part is that every episode includes some subtle life lessons, insights that you can discuss with your kids. So subscribe to Kaboom on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.